So when using Node.js, I kind of take the same general, some of the same general safety precautions that you usually take in when you're working with web application web servers. So you do, authentication keys, make sure you do validation and some data scrubbing, and make sure that you're at least using some kind of like encryption and decryption for any kind of data that's important that has to go back and forth, password hashing. So these are all kind of like the general things that you kind of use for like when you're dealing, especially with like authentication, either if it's user authentication or authentication between requests.
We use the standard Express modules for security and the standard Node modules, and we're fairly confident in them. We know that Node and Express keep updating them as vulnerabilities are found, and we're of the mindset that if there's a known vulnerability in a package, so a couple months ago there was a Heartbleed attack, and it turned out that we needed to upgrade Mongoose. So we did that and rectified the situation. But in general, I think security is pretty much a mindset in a company. So kind of like what DevOps has become in the networking community, I think security in a general company has to be a mindset. So you have to have processes in place and programming patterns that you follow in order to make your app secure.
We use Sneak to monitor the dependencies. I think that people are becoming more aware that not your application code, but your dependencies are where like a lot of vulnerabilities can lie. And even if you're aware of all the different types of vulnerabilities in your own code, you're probably not watching as closely for stuff in your dependencies. So having some sort of dependency management, using something maybe like Greenkeeper to keep your dependencies up to date, so you don't fall victim to new vulnerabilities that come out. They come out all the time. I think that's a pretty fair way to stay secure, or at least reasonably secure. And that's so we've been doing that at CFPB, and it's worked out well so far.
I was one of the early adopters of Node.js 4 years ago, and back in the days the modules weren't as mature, the framework wasn't as mature. So we have great tooling, we have great supports from big companies, they hiring core contributors and letting people work on open source. That's amazing. That's something we didn't have 20 years ago when people were working on Java. Java was the mainstream, right? So I see it will only get better, but certainly there is work needs to be done.
Our enterprise applications are primarily Python tooling, and we're moving more towards web applications for enterprise and to get mobile apps out to our constituents so they can see things like consumption, meter alerts, outage information, and so being able to create a backend like with Node.js, for instance, have a web interface that takes that in and sends that to a mobile application is kind of what we're trying to go to. Right. And obviously security is a big thing. So when you got those forward interfacing applications, security is a big thing. So we did talk to some of the vendors here about that and about monitoring performance, but also the security aspects of it.
There's those sneaky ways that people get past security that's already out there, and those really like just, I want to call them deep, I guess we could call them deep hackers, who just know these very particular security holes. For example, I never really thought much about regex denial of service until it came up. And then when that came up, it was like a light bulb went on my head, and it's just like, wow, I never thought people were gonna get through my system that way. So these things that's not very commonly talked about unless you go to big conferences like these, or just very more like specialized kind of discussions and meetings.
One of the main concerns that we find with our clients is actually vetting modules, because the ecosystem is vast. It's been growing exponentially for several years. There's over 200,000 modules on NPM, and the question is, which ones do you trust? So one of the things that we do is we help clients select the right modules for them, and the modules that are by trusted authors. So there's a lot of trust-based mechanisms, I think, that are sort of implicit in the way that we work. Other than that, the way that we really deal with security is actually at a talent level for us. As a consultancy firm, we try to hire the best and the brightest, who all of these people are very proficient and aware of security needs. On top of that, we do internal reviews as well to catch anything that might have fallen through the gaps. Beyond that, though, we always recommend that a client gets software that's written by us or in collaboration with us or with anyone, pen tested by a separate party, because that's the only real way that you're going to have the sort of assurance and insurance, I suppose, for any vulnerabilities.
Just the platform, just the language by itself is not going to prevent developers from some lazy habits, from not validating your data, from not applying best practices, right? So the best framework in the world, the best platform in the world is not going to prevent that. So it's part that developers need to learn those practices. I went to a couple of good talks on security today, and that's what we need to teach. And we need to write more blog posts, maybe on your website about that, do some online courses to educate people. And also, the Node Foundation, they're doing a great job being transparent about security leaks, right? So they need to continue doing that. Every time there is some vulnerability, they have a patch relatively quick in a few hours, right? So that's important to keep that kind of emergency mode and quickly patch things up, right? Not to keep it secret and let people know. Some companies, they still run on old versions of Node, so like 0.10, well, it's not going to have all those security patches if something happens, right? So they need to keep updating, because if you have that technical debt of a couple years and then you jump from 0.10 to version 6 or version 8, which we'll have next year. So that's a huge jump, right? A lot of code will break. You cannot do that in 2 days.